Hi everyone, welcome to day 36 of my 50 days SQL challenge series where I solve data analyst and business analyst interview question for SQL. Today we'll be solving one of the recent data analyst interview question that was asked to one of my followers. I have received this request on my Instagram as a DM. So here is the questions. Write an SQL script to display the immediate managers of an employee. Given a table, employees with columns employee no, employee name and manager's ID. The script should take an input parameters employee no and return the employee's name along with their immediate manager's name. Now here's the interesting thing. If the employee has no manager, which means the manager's ID is null, display as no boss. So we basically need to return the employee name and their manager name based on the manager's ID. So let's see the data that we have in the table. We have employee no, employee name, job name, manager's ID, hire date, salary, commissions and department number. So basically we need to create a function that take basically employee number and basically return the manager's name. Now if that employee doesn't have a manager, it should tell basically no boss, right? This is what we need to do. And I can also see that this manager's ID are the employee ID in this same table. So that means based on this manager's ID we can get the employee name and that will be the managers, right? So for example, for this employee which is 7698, we can see the manager's ID is 7839 and 7839 manager is basically King, right? So we can basically get based on this manager's ID we can get the King as a name, which is basically employee name, but we can save it as a manager's name. So basically what we can do a self join to join the same table with itself based on this manager's ID from the first table and employee ID from the second table. Now let's start writing query to solve these questions. So let's see what are the things that we need. So we need two things, that is the employee name and the manager name based on this manager's ID. And if the manager ID doesn't exist, then we want to return basically no boss. So it's a very simple questions. Just we need to do a self join to join the same table. So let me just start writing the query. So I'm saying I need employee name, which is imp name, which is this column. Okay, so this is going to be employee name. Okay, so this is going to be employee name, and I'm just going to save it called as employee name. Okay, and other than that what I need is basically the manager's name for this employee. So I'll need to do a self join. So first let's just write down like this one. I'm saying employee name from where, so I'm just calling this table as called E1. Okay, now I'm saying this, I'm getting this employee name I'm getting from the first table which is E1. Okay, now I can do a join to join the same table with itself. So if I have one more table with the same data, now based on this manager's ID I can go to that table, for example this table, and I can see who has this manager's ID, basically who has this employee ID. Now this employee has this basically employee ID, so I will return this name, isn't it? So I'm going to say that I will do a join. Okay, now I'm going to do a left join. I will tell you why. Okay, so I'm going to do a left join with the same table which is employee, and this time I'm going to call basically employee 2. Okay, so I have done a left join with the same table, name it called employee 2, which is E2. Now what conditions I'm joining in? So I need to find basically based on this manager's ID from the second table, I need to find the employee name, right? So I'm just joining in on the manager's ID from the first table, and in the second table I have the employee ID. So I'm going to say E1 dot basically manager ID equals E2 dot basically employee no. Okay, now because in the second table we have all the same records, basically if in case we have this manager's ID we can find this employee name, isn't it, based on this basically manager's ID that we have got from the first table. This is done. Now what I need is basically what I need to return here is basically from the second table I'm saying that employee name only, employee name. So basically based on this manager's ID in the second table I will check in the employee column, employee number column, and I will see whatever, if the number match then I want to return this name basically of the manager's name, right? So here I'm saying the second, so from the second table also I'm getting basically employee name only, but I'm going to save it called as manager name. Okay, so let's cross verify the query before running it. So from the first table we are basically getting the employee name and saving it called employee name. From the second table we are getting basically the employee name and saving it as a manager's name, because in the second table based on this manager's ID we are getting the employee name. So basically that name is a manager's name, isn't it? Looks like fine, left join, and everything is fine. Here I missed on, so I'm just going to add that on conditions. Now the reason why I'm doing left join is basically I want all the records from the first table, basically all the employee name from the first table, and basically if in case there is no manager's ID, basically for this case like there's no manager's ID for the employee, that means I will be getting a null values, right? So I need that null values because I'm going to replace that null values with no boss. That means the employee doesn't have a manager's ID. Now let's just quickly run this query to see how it works. So here we're getting all the employee name from the left table, which is from our main table. Okay, and basically based on the manager's ID, we're checking the right table. Now if in case there is no manager's ID available, okay, so in the right table, basically for that employee we are basically printing null. That means we couldn't basically find a match with the right table. That's the reason I'm doing a left join. Now what I'll be doing is basically I will replace this null values with no manager. That means this employee doesn't have a manager's name because this employee doesn't have a manager's ID. So I'm going to replace this null values, which is using call as functions in Postgres SQL. So I'm going to say call as ESCE. Now this function basically replace a null value with some other value. So I'm going to add a text here. I'm going to say no boss, because this is what asked in the questions, that if the employee has no manager's ID, which means the manager ID is null, replace with basically no boss, right? So we are replacing with no boss. Now if I run this query, it's going to basically do our job. Okay, now you can see we are getting no boss wherever the employee doesn't have a boss. There is one more task that is left. So let's see the questions again. It says the script should take an input parameters as an employee no, and based on the employee number, basically it should tell employee name and the manager's name if it is available. If it is not available, it should tell basically no boss. So simply we can achieve that by adding a where conditions here. So we are going to say where, and here we'll be saying that employee from the first table, which is from the first table employee, and first table no, which is basically employee number, this one equals. Now we can basically add any employee number here to test. So first let's just add some employee number. Maybe we will try with this one. Let's try with Miller. So let's see if it returns the right name and basically the manager's name. Okay, so I'm going to edit like simple this way. So let's just test it. Now you can see Miller, we are getting the manager's name, which is Clark. Okay, let's just verify it for the Miller. What is the employee number we have? So this is the Miller records and the employee number is 7782. Now let's see who has 7782. We can just verify it. So 7782 has the employee, which is Clark. Okay, so that means our function is working fine. Now let's just test it for an employee who has no manager's ID like Ellen. So let's see the Ellen manager ID I have copied. So let's just test it here. I'm just going to enter it and basically click on run. Now I can see that our function is working fine. So we are getting the employee name, which is Ellen, and the manager name is not exist because the Ellen doesn't have a employee ID. So this is the Ellen. You can see Ellen doesn't have employee ID, so basically it has a null in the employee ID. So it's basically printing as basically no boss, or you can type any text that you want here. Now if you want to practice the same questions, go to the video descriptions and download this data by clicking on the GitHub link that I have added, and you can copy paste this code into your code editor and create the table and basically solve these questions. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video till the end. If you really like my content, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.